The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten, Volium. 1. Seiki-san cover art by Hanakoto. Chapter 3. The Angel's Generosity. As Amane had anticipated, he and Mahiru had returned to being nothing more than two people who attended the same school. He'd been feeling much better the following day and had happened to run into Mahiru when he went out to shop at the convenience store, but they hadn't said very much to each other. Amane did catch that Mahiru looked a little relieved to see him well on his way to recovery. Nothing changed back at school on the following Monday, either. The two were back to being strangers. The only tiny difference was that now, whenever they encountered each other on the way to school, she would greet him with a quick bow. That was all. "Oh, Amane, you feeling better?" "I'm good, thanks." It seemed that Itsuki had also been worried about Amane. He'd been in rather bad shape last Friday, after all. Amane's condition had been the first thing Itsuki asked about when they saw each other outside the school building. Itsuki had even sent Amane a text over the weekend, "You're not dead, right?" Amane had sent back a message that he was fine, but it seemed Itsuki had only been half convinced, because he let out a deep sigh of relief when he saw in person how much better his friend was feeling. "Yeah, well, when I saw you in such bad shape, even I started to worry, man. It's all good if you're better now. You ought to take better care of yourself. Start by cleaning your room or something. You sound like somebody else I know," Amane quipped. "Huh? Nothing. Something happened this weekend that kind of opened my eyes. I'll clean my place up in a few days." Itsuki didn't let up. "Nah, man, you gotta sort yourself out now." Amane turned away in a huff. It would probably take more than half a day to clean that mess up. Looking exasperated, Itsuki backed off a bit, saying, "I mean, you can live however you want, you know. But just clear a path you can actually walk through for the next time I come over. I'll deal with it." Wearing a sour face the whole time, Amane changed into his indoor shoes and headed for his classroom. An extremely boisterous room caught his attention as he walked down a hall, however, and he couldn't help but peek in. Glancing in through a hallway window, Amane saw Mahiru, as beautiful as she'd ever been, surrounded by her classmates. Whenever someone spoke to her, she would turn to them with a quiet smile. Everything about her persona seemed totally different from the Mahiru he'd seen the other day. Amane suddenly broke out in a smile. Noticing his friend's gaze, Itsuki's eyes followed the same path. He saw Mahiru and immediately understood. Sheena, huh? As popular as always. No surprise, given how pretty she is. Well, you know what they say. She's an angel. What about you, Itsuki? Think she's cute? Amane asked. Yeah, I guess so. But I've got chi, so only in a sorta aesthetic appreciation type way, Itsuki replied. Quit going on about your girlfriend already. Itsuki had a girlfriend named Chi, although that was a nickname. Her full name was Chito Shirakawa. They were an extremely close couple, madly in love with each other. It gave Amane heartburn whenever he saw them together. Although Amane was quick to dismiss the girlfriend talk, Itsuki didn't seem particularly offended. Amane often said things like that, so Itsuki just laughed. You're heartless. So let me ask you, do you think she's cute, Amane? She's definitely beautiful, but that's all, answered Amane. How bland, Itsuki commented. She's like a flower on a high peak that my hand could never reach. I've got nothing to do with her. Looking is enough. Fair. Some quirk of fate may have brought Mahiru and Amane together that other day, but they were truly destined to live in different worlds. The idea that Amane, a self-admitted hopeless loser, and Mahiru, the beautiful super student who could do anything, might one day have any kind of relationship, let alone a romantic one, was frankly ridiculous. It was a veritable impossibility. That's right, Amane thought. There's no need to concern myself with her any further. What are you eating? The theory that the two would never interact again was quickly disproven. Amane was sucking down some nutritional jelly on his veranda while gazing up at the sky when Mahiru called to him. It had been too much of a bother to even go to the convenience store, so he was contenting himself with the pouch of jelly he had at home while getting some air when Mahiru unexpectedly came out onto her own veranda. She leaned over her railing slightly, looked at the nutritional jelly pouch that was in Amane's mouth, and frowned. For a moment, Amane was frozen. He'd thought she was done with him. Can't you see? It's a 10-second energy replenishment jelly, he finally answered. Don't tell me that's what you're calling dinner? Mahiru asked, incredulous. Of course it is. That's all you're eating? A high school boy, with a healthy appetite? That's none of your business. Normally, Amane would have eaten a boxed meal from the convenience store or something pre-made from the supermarket, but today, he'd neglected to pick something up for dinner, and he didn't feel like instant ramen, so this was all he had. It probably wouldn't be enough, though, so he planned on having a snack later, too. I guess I don't need to ask whether you can cook for yourself. It definitely doesn't seem like you can, at least. And yet you're living on your own, even though you can't cook or clean. Mahiru's observation was brutally honest. Shut up. That's none of your business, Amane fired back, though he knew he couldn't argue with the truth. He frowned and finished off the remainder of his jelly. He'd wised up about cleaning his place a couple days ago and was definitely planning to do something about it sometime soon. Ruminating on Mahiru's scolding only seemed to make Amane want to do it less, however. It also made him wonder why she was making such a fuss over him in the first place. Mahiru just stared at Amane, then let out a soft sigh. Wait here, she instructed before disappearing back into her own apartment. What now? Amane grumbled as he listened to the clatter of the glass door closing behind her. He'd been told to wait, but he didn't know what for. Turning a puzzled gaze toward Mahiru's apartment, Amane stood there obediently, but there was no immediate answer. It's starting to get chilly out here, I'd like to go inside, but... He'd been told to stay put, so that was what he'd do. The autumn evening was colder than expected, and Amane's loosely fitting, casual clothes did little to help him stay warm. As Amane waited, watching his deep breaths come out white in the cold, he heard the electronic bell chime from his front door, announcing a visitor. It was pretty obvious who it was. Truly puzzled, Amane made his way toward the front door, dodging scattered clothes and magazines on the floor. He knew who it was without even looking through the peephole, so he slid his feet into a pair of slippers, took the chain off the door, and opened it. As expected, he came face to face with waves of sandy blonde hair. What are you doing? Amane asked. I couldn't stand how badly you were neglecting your health. These are just some leftovers I had, but please take them, Mahiru stated plainly as she abruptly stuck a hand out in front of her. In her delicate palm, somewhat smaller than Amane's own, was a plastic container. He could vaguely see some sort of stewed dish through the semi-transparent lid. He couldn't tell exactly what it was, however, as the container had filled with steam from the warmth of the food. Mahiru seemed to understand the confused look in Amane's eyes as he stood there blinking. She let out a deep sigh. You're not eating properly. Nutritional supplements are just that, supplements. You can't live on them alone. What are you, my mom? Amane jeered. I believe what I said is common sense. Also, shouldn't you have tidied up your room by now? There still isn't any room to walk. Mahiru narrowed her eyes in obvious disappointment as she looked past Amane at the room beyond, and Amane's words stalled in his throat. I have, a little. No, you haven't. Normally, people don't drop their clothes on the floor. Those just fell there. That wouldn't happen if you washed, dried, folded, and put them away properly. Also, you should bundle up your magazines after you're done reading them. That way you won't slip on one and fall. It wasn't that he couldn't sense the small barbs in her words, but he also understood that Mahiru was, for some reason, genuinely concerned for him, so he couldn't dismiss everything she was saying. After all, the clutter of magazines had almost tripped the both of them up just the other night. She had a point. Amane had no rebuttal. He screwed up his face, squeezed his mouth shut tight, and sullenly took the container from Mahiru's hand. The food suffused his palm with a welcome warmth, especially after all the time spent standing on his chilly veranda. So I can eat this? Amane asked. If you don't need it, I can throw it out, Mahiru answered flatly. No, I'm grateful for it. I don't usually get to eat an angel's home cooking. Stop calling me that, seriously. Using her school nickname was a kind of petty, needling revenge for her critical comments. Her feelings about the moniker were written clearly across her pale cheeks as they turned red. There was no doubt about it, she hated being called an angel. Were he in the same position, Amane was certain he would hate it, too. That hardly needed to be said. Despite understanding Mahiru's stance, Amane couldn't help but smile when he saw her looking up at him with flushed cheeks and tiny, bitter tears forming. I'm not going to say I'm sorry, he declared. It was clear that any further teasing would be certain to wreck what little goodwill she had left for him, so Amane figured it was prudent to give it a rest. We're not even that close. Mahiru also seemed not to want to hear any more, and she emphasized this by clearing her throat forcefully as she pulled herself together. Her cheeks were still tinged with red, though, so she didn't look like much had changed. Well, thank you for this. Though, you don't really need to worry about what happened before, Amane said. I don't. I considered that debt settled. This is for my own self-satisfaction. I saw that you weren't taking care of yourself, and I was concerned, that's all. Of course. Mahiru pitied him, that was it. There was no way to hide, she'd gotten a very good look at how he lived the other night. Even now, she could see the garbage piled up in the hallway behind him. You need to at least start eating proper meals and get your life together, she scolded. Yes, Mom, Amane answered sarcastically. He was getting a little tired of listening to Mahiru's nagging. Amane churlishly carried the meal Mahiru had brought him back into his apartment. He grabbed a pair of disposable chopsticks he'd gotten at the supermarket and sat down on his living room couch, eager to sample the flavors of her cooking. He remembered enjoying the rice porridge that she'd brought him before, even though his sense of taste had been dulled by sickness. The slow-cooked porridge had possessed a rich, comforting taste that had been gentle on his stomach. If that was any indication, Mahiru's cooking was undoubtedly quite good, but now it was time to find out for sure. As he hastily opened the lid of the container, the savory scent of stew drifted gently up at him. Various root vegetables had been cooked together with some chicken. The light-colored sauce underscored the vibrant hues of carrots and green beans, all of which had been cut into bite-sized pieces. Amane's stomach growled, reminding him that the only thing he'd had to eat was some nutritional jelly. He hastily snapped his disposable chopsticks apart and brought a piece of daikon radish to his mouth. Yum! Amane's mouth was greeted with a complex flavor. Typical of the health-conscious Mahiru, the dish was only lightly seasoned, spiced mostly with dashi stock. It was immediately obvious that she hadn't used store-bought, granulated dashi. Instead, she'd made it herself using with dried bonito fish and kombu seaweed. The difference in taste was night and day. As he chewed it thoroughly, the flavor of the dashi and the other seasonings, as well as the taste of the vegetables, spread gently through his mouth. Amane had never been a fan of veggies. He usually went out of his way to avoid them, but in this dish, the essence of each ingredient came together in perfect harmony, and Amane happily savored them all. There wasn't much chicken. Perhaps Mahiru had done that on purpose as if to tell him to eat more vegetables. What little meat there was had been cooked plump and juicy. There was nothing to complain about there, Amane thought, aside from the quantity. For something made by a high school girl, the ingredients were a little plain, but her skill more than made up for it. That Amane so readily enjoyed the food was enough of a testament to that fact. It would have been even better with some rice, and maybe some miso soup or clear broth on the side, but Amane didn't have any prepared. He was all out of rice anyway, so that modest wish was not destined to be granted that night. It was too late now, but he regretted not buying any instant rice packets beforehand. That angel's amazing, Amane said to himself as he devoured the perfectly seasoned vegetables, chopsticks never slowing for a second. To think, she's great at school, and sports, and all kinds of housework. If Mahiru had been there to hear Amane's praise, she would have hated it. Here's this back. The food was good. The following evening, Amane carried the borrowed container over to Mahiru's apartment. The boy was certainly bad at housework, but not so bad that he couldn't wash something before giving it back. In his hand, he held the carefully cleaned little box, knowing that it was good manners to return it only after it had been thoroughly washed and dried. Mahiru had appeared the moment Amane rang the doorbell without even checking to see who it was, as if she'd been expecting him. She was wearing a wine-colored knit dress, and when she saw her visitor, her eyes narrowed gently. She quickly checked the container and said, "You washed it and everything, huh? Look at you." Amane frowned slightly when she praised him like a little child. "Well, thank you for taking the time," Mahiru continued. "Now take this." She pressed a new, warm container into Amane's hand. From what he could tell, there was sautéed pork and eggplant inside. It seemed to have cooled enough that the lid hadn't fogged up, for Amane could clearly spy the color of eggplant, grilled pork, and sprinkled sesame seeds through the clear top. From the color, he guessed the sauce was probably miso flavor. The sight of the eggplant with slight scorch marks and the lustrous pork definitely roused his appetite. No one would deny that it looked delicious, but Amane couldn't understand why he'd been handed dinner again. "No, I just came to return the container," he tried to explain. "This is today's dinner," Mahiru answered coolly. "Yeah, I get that, but I just want to ask, you don't have any allergies, do you? Don't get the wrong idea, though. I won't be catering to your tastes or anything. I don't, but I can't accept your food again." Taking a portion of the girl's dinner for the second time in a row seemed wrong to Amane. His malnourished body was grateful for the food, and Mahiru was clearly a much better cook than other girls her age, and the meal he was holding was sure to be delicious, but it also held no small amount of danger. If someone from school saw the two of them meeting like this, it could turn into a big debacle. That would be the end of Amane's quiet student life for sure. These apartments were meant for single occupancy, but the rent was pretty high because of the building's location and the amenities. Amane had never seen another student from their school in the building except Mahiru, of course, so he was probably worrying over nothing. Even with that mild consolation, his brief meetings with the angel still made him wary. I made too much, so I'm just happy to be rid of it, Mahiru explained. In that case, I'm happy to take it. But someone might get the wrong idea, since people usually do this sort of thing for someone they like, Amane said sheepishly. And do you have the wrong idea? I guess not. One look at Mahiru's expression was enough to clear up any misconceptions about her feelings toward Amane. There was no way that a beautiful, talented girl like Mahiru could possibly fall for an oblivious slob like Amane. Sure, a cute next-door neighbor bringing him food seemed like something out of a romantic comedy, but there was no romance here and certainly no comedy. The situation was as devoid of those elements as Amane's own apartment was devoid of rice. What kindness existed in the angel's barbed words had been born only from pity. Well then, there's no problem, is there? And anyway, it looks like you were surviving on convenience store meals and side dishes from the supermarket, stated Mahiru. How could you tell? Amane asked. It's not hard to see that your kitchen has barely been used, and you have a ton of disposable chopsticks from the convenience store and the supermarket on your desk. Besides, I can tell just by looking at you. You've got an unhealthy complexion. Amane's expression froze. Mahiru had gotten all that just from one visit to his apartment. Everything she'd said had been spot on, he had no room to argue. All right, I'll be going. Mahiru bowed and went back inside her apartment, having said what she'd wanted to say and given him what she'd wanted to give. Amane looked at the container in his hands as he listened to the jangling sound of the chain on the other side of Mahiru's front door slide into place. The heat from the food was beginning to warm the palms of his hands. He let out a soft sigh and returned to his place. As expected, the stir-fried sesame miso eggplant and pork was delicious. Amane found himself wishing even more than yesterday that he'd bought some rice. As time went on, Amane began swapping an empty container for a full one every day, and his diet improved dramatically. Mahiru's cooking was always light and healthy, and since every dish made him want rice, Amane started fixing microwave packets with each meal. The angel had a variety of cuisines in her repertoire: Japanese, Chinese, even Western. Each day brought something new, but every single meal was delicious, and Amane developed an appetite like never before. Like a wild animal grown fat on handouts, Amane quickly came to rely on Mahiru's charity. Even as he continued to obediently accept container after container, he knew it was presumptuous to expect a meal every day. Still, he happily and hungrily licked his chops each time. You're looking good lately. You fix your diet or something? Itsuki took a long, hard look at Amane one day during lunch. Apparently, his complexion had improved, probably because he was finally supplying his body with much-needed nutrition. Amane knew his friend was perceptive, and he felt a bit of a cold sweat break out as he slurped the udon noodles he'd ordered for school lunch. Itsuki, you scare me, he said. Why's that? Do you mean I'm right? Well, I guess you could say I've had no choice but to re-examine my lifestyle recently. Whenever Amane passed by Mahiru near their apartments, she would chide him gently to take care of himself, and she was regularly sharing her dinner with him. It was only natural that his life had improved. On the one hand, he wanted to call her his guardian angel, but a small part of him also felt like she was meddling where it was none of her business. Amane had indirectly confirmed Itsuki's suspicions by dodging the question, and Itsuki cackled with delighted laughter. Yeah, I knew it. You always looked unhealthy 'cause the way you were living was so crappy. Shut up. But what made you decide to re-examine your lifestyle? I guess I was forced to. Your mom found out? You're not right, but you're not far off, either. Mahiru really did sound like Amane's mom at times. She was much too young and too cute to be a mother, though. Still, the way the girl went to such lengths to care for Amane made it hard for him to refuse her. Say, Itsuki? Do I really seem that unhealthy? Well, to start with, you're pretty pale. I guess you're tall enough, but you're gangly. You're also always shuffling around all apathetic like, so you look like a zombie. But that's just how I look. You think I don't know that? Try looking like one of the living for a change. Don't be absurd. Wait, but seriously, a zombie. Amane wasn't really sure because he almost never bothered to closely check his own face in the mirror, but apparently, he gave others the impression that he was barely alive. If he looked half dead even on a good day, that would explain why Mahiru had been so worried about him before. You should pay a little more attention to how other people see you, Amane. You're always hunched over, staring at the ground. It makes you hard to approach, and it's not like you go out of your way to get close to anybody, either. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you're the very definition of a moody teenager. You sure know how to keep it casual when you're insulting a guy. Fine, I won't sugarcoat it, then. You look like a corpse, and your life is a mess. Itsuki continued teasing his friend, insisting that he ought to take this opportunity to pay more attention to his appearance and demeanor, not to mention his health. Sharply turning away, Amane replied sarcastically, "Thanks for your concern." Chapter 4. A Chance Encounter. Ah! Amane heard a beautiful voice ring out like a bell from behind him. Recently, he'd grown accustomed to hearing that voice, but only around his apartment building. Now he heard it while he was standing in the sweets aisle at the neighborhood supermarket. Amane had never expected Mahiru to acknowledge him in public, so he turned around with some bewilderment to see her standing there, eyes wide. A supermarket basket hung from her arm, and inside it sat a daikon radish and some tofu, as well as a package of chicken thighs and a carton of milk. These were likely the ingredients for her dinner tonight. This was nothing special. Amane had coincidentally stopped by the candy aisle at the same time. That was all. Just so you know, this is merely a coincidence, Amane asserted. It's not like I'm stalking you or anything. I know. Mahiru nodded. We're both just here because it's the closest supermarket. Before Amane had a chance to agree, he heard the girl mutter, "Really, though, that's the first thing that came to mind." She stared down at a notebook that she was carrying. It was just like the meticulous Mahiru to dutifully record everything she needed. Ignoring Amane in favor of her flower-patterned notebook, Mahiru brushed past the sweets and began searching the condiments on display in the next aisle. Something about Mahiru searching the shelves for kitchen staples and murmuring things like soy sauce and mirin in her lovely voice seemed cute to Amane. It was clear that the girl was in a strange kind of mood, however. "Mirin is right here. Look," Amane said, pointing it out. "Ah, not that I'm looking for the low-alcohol kind. I can't buy that, since I'm underage," Mahiru replied. "This is considered alcohol? Mirin is sweet rice wine, after all. The ones that are specifically for cooking still have alcohol, but they add in salt to make it gross to drink, so even underage people can buy it." Amane had been about to hand her a bottle of mirin when she suddenly refused it, shook her head, and instead placed the low-alcohol alternative in her basket. Learn something every day. This was all new to Amane, who did so little housework that even these simple tidbits seemed revelatory. He watched Mahiru as she moved quickly on down the aisle, stopping in front of a shelf full of soy sauce. Mahiru frowned, as if she had only just noticed the price labels. Bargain price, limit 1 bottle per person. She had apparently been intending to buy a spare. Mahiru grumbled in disappointment and turned to glance at Amane. "Maybe, I could buy one, too?" Amane quickly sensed what Mahiru had been trying to convey with her eyes, and with a wry smile, he picked up a bottle of soy sauce. When he did, her lips formed a satisfied arch. "It's helpful to have someone who understands," she said. "You're more economical than I expected," Amane commented. "Well, I don't see why I shouldn't find the best prices when I can. Cut down on needless expense, right? I wonder if that's what they call a thrifty mentality. Well, as long as you're living on an allowance from your parents, I guess that's for the best." Amane may have technically lived alone, but in reality, his parents still supported him. His family was fairly rich, and they covered the rent of his clean, safe apartment, took care of his school fees, and provided him with a more than fair allowance. Amane had never had to worry about his expenses, but he was grateful for everything his parents did for him, so he tried not to waste money. "That's right. We depend on their support, so it's important to be frugal," Mahiru replied matter-of-factly, taking stock of the contents of her basket. Her voice was cold, like something had stolen away her warmth. Amane flinched at Mahiru's flat tone, but when she looked up from her groceries, her expression had returned to normal. The gloomy eyes he'd seen in that brief moment were already gone. "Anyway, are you really buying that?" Mahiru asked, as if to change the subject, looking at the packs of instant rice and the container of potato salad that were in the basket that Amane was holding. The meals that Mahiru was sharing with him were, of course, delicious, but they weren't enough on their own. To compensate, Amane would pick up a staple food and side salad like he'd done today. "I mean, it's dinner," Amane explained. "It's unhealthy," Mahiru shot back. You're so fussy. I'm buying a salad, aren't I? A potato salad. How is your body still functioning? Mind your own business. Mahiru put wordless pressure on him, scrutinizing him with eyes that reproached him and told him to eat more vegetables. Amane turned away and let Mahiru go ahead of him. Chatting about this and that, the two bought their respective things. Amane had started to pack his purchases into a plastic bag, but Mahiru produced a reusable bag she'd brought and quickly put everything into it. She was truly an environmentally conscious angel. Mahiru had only brought the one bag, however, and Amane was a little anxious that the quantity of groceries was too much for it. With the milk, soy sauce, and low-alcohol cooking mirin, that was 4 liters of liquid altogether, and if they weighed anything like water, that meant 4 kilograms right there. There was still the whole daikon radish and the other ingredients to consider, too. The bag had to be really heavy. Everything was packed in quite neatly, but still, it would surely be hard work carrying it all the way back to Amane and Mahiru's building. She's been cooking for me, so she must be going through more seasonings and ingredients than she normally does. She's gotta be making a lot in order to split the dishes with me. The amount she gives me is always nearly a whole meal's worth. Mahiru says it's all just extra, but she must be making a lot of food on purpose. After Mahiru had gone through so much trouble to take care of Amane, it'd wound his pride if he didn't do anything to help her out now. As soon as Mahiru finished packing the reusable bag, Amane took hold of the handles and lifted it. It wasn't all that heavy to him, of course, but he could tell that it would definitely be difficult for her to carry for very long. Mahiru may have been really good at sports, but pure arm strength was an entirely different matter. Surely, Amane thought, his eyes tracing her slim figure under her clothing, surely there was no way that her slender arms could command the power needed to lift these heavy groceries. Caramel-colored eyes blinked rapidly. Mahiru looked surprised or maybe a little concerned. I'm not stealing it or anything, Amane said in his defense. I'm not worried about that, Mahiru replied. It's just, I can carry my own bags, you know? It'd be more charming if you'd be quiet and let me take care of you for a change, quipped Amane. That's basically saying I'm not charming, Mahiru answered flatly. Well, think about how you act at school, then compare that to how you act toward me. Mahiru took a step back. Maybe Amane had unknowingly hit a nerve. The version of herself that she showed at school, the kind, gentle, modest girl everyone was familiar with, that was not the person Amane knew. Yes, Mahiru was always kind to him, but she was also far more direct. She never sugar-coated anything or hid behind niceties. Everything she said to him was brief and frank. Amane took advantage of Mahiru's stunned silence and briskly sauntered off toward the supermarket exit, holding his school bag in one hand and the reusable shopping bag stuffed with groceries in the other. He was leaving her behind, but he didn't care. Unconcerned, he continued on as the gap between them grew wider. He didn't slow down or give her a chance to catch up. They had already been standing next to each other in the supermarket, after all. If they walked side by side on the way home and somebody saw them, that could start rumors. So really, this kind of distance was best for both of them. Amane hurried on with his heavy burden while pretending not to be aware of Mahiru. As he strode along, he thought he heard someone mutter thanks behind him. Chapter 5: The Angel and the Great Cleaning Campaign. Amane was terrible at housework of any kind, but the thing he was worst at was cleaning. Surprisingly, he actually could cook. More specifically, he could prepare something hot and usually technically edible, as long as he was willing to set aside petty concerns like presentation or flavor and also assumed the possibility of grievous bodily injury at some point during the process. He wasn't completely incapable of preparing food. Laundry was all right, too. That much was possible for anyone, even Amane. If push came to shove, there was always the option of taking his clothes to a coin laundromat. All it boiled down to was a matter of stuffing everything into the machine and letting it run with detergent and water inside. Amane could pull that off, no problem. The one thing he was absolutely hopeless with, however, was cleaning. What do I do? One weekend, Amane had finally gotten tired of listening to both Mahiru and Itsuki lecture him day in and day out about cleaning his apartment and had resolved to finally do something about it. The only problem was that Amane was at a complete loss on how to get started. He knew that this was his own fault, but the first problem was that his things were piled up all over the place, and he couldn't figure out how he could even begin to get them in order. Unsure of what else to do, Amane started by washing his bed sheets and airing out his futon. What should come next? He wondered. Clothes and magazines are scattered everywhere, so there's really no room to walk. One small mercy was that he always threw out any food garbage right away, so there were no awful stenches or greasy stains. It was simply an enormous amount of clutter, enough that it seemed like an insurmountable problem. As Amane sighed softly at the mountain of work before him, the doorbell rang. He let out a little gasp. Rather than a regular visitor, he had begun to think of his neighbor more like a delivery person, a blessing from above who just handed over gifts and then left. As he stood before his messy room, however, Mahiru seemed like a savior. Amane scrambled for his front door but couldn't find his footing. He stumbled, caught himself, and carefully crept the rest of the way to the door with one hand pressed against the wall for balance. "Sorry, I wanted to pick up my container a little earlier today." "What are you doing?" Mahiru asked when Amane opened the door. "I was trying to clean," he admitted. Mahiru looked at Amane, still off balance, with a rather astonished expression. "I heard a loud noise just now," she said. "I almost fell." "I bet you did. You haven't even begun to clean, have you?" "I wasn't sure how to start." "I can tell." Amane grimaced at Mahiru's comment. It was no less candid than usual, and Amane really couldn't think of anything to justify his lack of progress. Besides, he knew that if he got sulky now and lashed out, he wouldn't be able to get her advice on how to go about cleaning his apartment. The trouble was that he wasn't sure how exactly to ask for Mahiru's help. "I was hoping for some cleaning tips, but I wonder if she'll actually give me any advice." Amane hesitated when he saw that Mahiru was peering past him at the clutter beyond. Her eyes conveyed her shock at the disastrous scene behind him. It truly must have been an awful sight. Unbelievable. "I'll help you clean your apartment." "Huh?" Even Amane knew that it would be too shameless to ask Mahiru to help him clean. That's why he'd only been planning to see if she had any suggestions. Never had he dared to imagine that Mahiru would come right out and offer to help. "I hate the idea that the apartment next to mine is so filthy." Such scathing words, but again, Amane could offer no argument. "You must think it's so easy to live alone, but you can't even clean up after yourself. Worse, you act like it's no problem, like everything will sort itself out eventually, but it clearly hasn't. Why don't you stop and take a moment to look at yourself?" Amane was at a loss for words. His mother had always told him that if he was diligent about cleaning regularly, it would be easy, but he'd ignored her, and this was the result. He was fully aware that he was suffering the consequences of his own actions. "Look, as long as you keep up with routine cleaning, your place won't get this bad again. It's obvious that you have some terrible habits," Mahiru said. "You're absolutely right," agreed Amane. He couldn't get angry with her. He already owed her so much, and she'd been so kind to him. Besides, everything she was saying about his past behavior was true. He had underestimated how difficult living alone would be, and he really did just sort of assume that everything would somehow work itself out, and this was the result. Amane could only nod solemnly at Mahiru's words. "Well, is it all right if I start with this room?" Mahiru asked. "Is it all right with you?" Amane answered with a question of his own. "I'm the one who's offering, so of course it's all right. I'm going to go get ready, so while I do, if you have anything you don't want me to see, or any valuables, please put them in a closet and lock them up." "I'm not worried about that." Amane refused to even entertain the idea that someone who had been so kind to him, even despite her sharp words, might steal from him. Not to mention that Mahiru was far too good-hearted to ever harm another person like that. "You're not?" she inquired. "There's no way that you would do something like that," Amane replied. "No, that's not what I... Look, aren't you worried that I might see something that, as a boy, you'd rather hide?" Well, unfortunately I don't happen to have any such things." "Well, in that case, it's fine, then." "All right, I'm going to go change clothes and fetch some cleaning supplies. I don't take cleaning lightly, you know." Mahiru returned to her apartment, and Amane watched her go with a wry smile. She came back wearing different clothes, a long white t-shirt and khaki-colored cargo pants. The t-shirt closely followed the lines of her body, the delicate fabric bringing the curves and edges into full relief. Mahiru's long hair had been skillfully gathered into a perfectly round bun, and Amane felt strangely uncomfortable being able to see the white nape of her neck. Previously, he had only ever seen her in dresses and skirts, and he found there was something refreshing about this look. Amane had thought before that boyish clothes like this probably wouldn't suit her well, but he had clearly been wrong. He was beginning to realize that beautiful girls looked good in whatever they put on. This new outfit looked comfortable for moving around the house, but it was also a look that Mahiru could have worn around town. Amane never would have imagined that these were clothes that she was okay with getting dirted. "You don't mind if those get messed up?" Amane asked. I was planning to throw these out soon anyway, so it's fine if they get a bit dirty. Mahiru scanned the cataclysm that was Amane's apartment and sighed softly. I'm only going to say this once, we're going to clean thoroughly, got it? I understand. Good, then let's get to it. I'm not going to go easy on you, and I won't let this end halfway through. I assume you have no objections? Mahiru had posed the question so forcefully that Amane could do nothing but sheepishly reply in the affirmative. So began the great battle to clean Amane's apartment. A battle spearheaded by an angel. First things first, let's toss any clothes into the laundry basket. Usually when you clean, you work from top to bottom, but we have to handle the clutter on the floor first before we can run the vacuum cleaner. Before we start the wash, we can divide the clothes into different loads, since there are too many to wash at once. Do you want to split them into things you wear and things you don't wear? Or do you want to wash everything? Just do it however you like, replied Amane. It seemed so obvious to him now. Of course they had to clear the floor before trying to do anything else. There isn't any underwear out here or anything, right? Those are in my dresser, as you would expect. That's fine, then. We can probably put off washing clothes for now, since even if we wash and dry them, we'll kick up dust by cleaning and just end up having to do them again. If you're not in a hurry, you can do the laundry after we finish cleaning. Okay. Now, regarding the magazines. Really, the only thing to do is to throw them out. I suppose it's a bit of a different story if you're collecting them, but from the way you keep them piled up everywhere, I doubt that's the case. If you do want to hold on to some part of one, tear out the page and put it in a scrapbook, then dispose of the rest. Tie up any magazines you're getting rid of and put them out for collection. Mahiru set about the task of cleaning right away, directing Amane to put his discarded clothing into the laundry basket as she gathered up every last magazine. She told him to speak now if there were any that Amane wanted to keep, but there weren't any in particular that he needed, so he simply shook his head. Having received the answers she required, Mahiru skillfully tied up the bundle using some plastic cord that she had apparently brought with her. When you're finished gathering the clothes, please go through the other assorted clutter and decide whether to throw anything out. All these different things on the floor, same as before, sort them into what you need to keep and what you don't. Then put the latter in the trash. Got it? Aha, Amane answered meekly. If you have a problem with taking orders, you'd better tell me now. No, I don't, but I was just thinking about how quick you're doing all of this. If I don't, we'll run out of time. It's total chaos in here, after all. You're right. Even though it was the weekend, time was limited. If they were going to run the vacuum, it would have to be during the day, considering that the noise would be a nuisance to the neighbors. Since Mahiru knew that it would take a lot of effort to get the place to a state where they could vacuum, she was working to tidy up as quickly as possible. One part of Amane felt bad for letting her do so much. On the other hand, under Mahiru's direction, more and more of the floor began to appear for the first time in a long while. Professor Sheena, Amane muttered. If you're going to ask for guidance from me like I'm a teacher, first learn by imitating. I'm not going to sort through your personal effects, so please be diligent and keep only what you really need, Mahiru instructed. Yes, sir. Please don't address me as a man. The angel nonchalantly returned Amane's jabs as she skillfully cleared up more of the clutter with a serious expression the whole time. Amane had a bad habit of hoarding useless junk, and he was both grateful for Mahiru's decisiveness and envious of it. Here she was, in a stranger's apartment, picking through the mess without hesitation. She really was the spitting image of an angel. Mahiru was so efficient that she could have easily cleaned up the whole place by herself had she wanted to. However, likely because she was in such a hurry, she got careless about watching her footing. There was no doubt that it was Amane's fault for leaving it on the floor, but Mahiru slipped on a piece of discarded clothing and lost her balance. The instant a small "ah" escaped Mahiru's mouth, Amane dived across the room, aiming for the spot where he thought Mahiru would most likely fall. A light, sweet fragrance mixed with the musty smell of the dust that had been kicked up in the panic. Amane landed on his backside, leaving his rear end to suffer a dull sting, but it was tolerable. He groaned just a bit as he felt the weight of Mahiru pressing down on him. She must be happy that I caught her right away. Fujimiya? Mahiru looked up at him. She didn't seem angry, but she didn't seem particularly happy about the situation either. Mostly, she just sounded surprised. I can accept the blame for falling, but this is exactly why you must tidy up, because otherwise things like this are bound to happen. I'm really sorry, honestly. You're not hurt, are you? Amane asked. I'm fine. Thanks for going out of your way to catch me. I'm sorry, too. No, it's all my fault. Amane wouldn't have been able to bear it if Mahiru had gotten hurt while helping him, especially considering she was already sharing meals with him. That would have been absolutely unforgivable. He wouldn't have even been able to look her in the eye. If he needed to, he was considering kneeling and asking for forgiveness, but Mahiru didn't seem too upset over her tumble. We're cleaning up so that things like this don't happen anymore, understand? Yeah. I'm really very sorry. It's fine, you don't need to apologize. I'm helping you because I feel like it, after all. Mahiru looked just a little bit flustered as she gazed up at Amane. Amane suddenly realized how close they were and was aware of her pressing against him. For a boy who basically never interacted with girls on a regular basis, this was a heart-pounding situation. Even though neither of them had any romantic feelings for the other, something felt very wrong about it somehow. Mahiru didn't seem to be conscious of the situation, so Amane gently grabbed her shoulder and pushed her off of him. Then he stood up before the awkwardness could show on his face. Should we keep cleaning? He managed after a moment. Yes, that's a good idea, Mahiru replied. Fortunately for Amane, she appeared to be oblivious to his trembling as she grabbed the hand Amane extended and rose to her feet. Mahiru seemed unaware of how closely she'd been pressed up against him, because she just maintained her usual expression. Amane figured that a girl like Mahiru must have been used to the attention of a lot of boys. Surely a little contact like that wouldn't be enough to unnerve her like it did him. Smiling wryly at Mahiru's demeanor, Amane decided it would be wrong to leave everything up to her and return to cleaning with newfound resolve. Even though the task was wholly unfamiliar, he did his best to struggle through. You are full of surprises. Amane was too focused on his work to notice the quiet words that escaped Mahiru's lips, nor did he see that her ears, hidden by her straw-colored hair, had turned slightly red. Phew, now, this is clean. In the end, it had taken the pair the entire day to clean Amane's apartment. Several hours were spent tidying up the clutter on his floor, and then, between washing the clothes, dusting the shelves and light fixtures, scrubbing the windows, and vacuuming, the entire day had flown by before they knew it. The sun had been visible when Mahiru came over, but it had long since set by now, proof of just how long she and Amane had been working. It had certainly been no small task, but those efforts were not without results. Amane's apartment was so clean that he barely recognized it. There was no unnecessary clutter, and he could see the floor. Once dirty window panes and frames didn't have a single speck of dirt on them. The lights, too, shone brighter now that they had been dusted. The place was finally clean. Without all the junk crowding every surface, it actually looked to be quite a comfortable space. To think that it took us a whole day, Mahiru observed. Guess that's what it takes when it's such a mess, Amane answered. But it was your mess. Alright, you are. Amane verbally prostrated himself before his angelic savior, who had taken mercy on him. Mahiru, who had wasted one of her precious weekend days helping him, finished tying up a garbage bag with a beleaguered look. She didn't seem upset, but a hint of fatigue showed on her face, though it was mixed with a sense of accomplishment. That was only natural, since she had been working all day. After everything that had transpired, Amane would have been ashamed to simply let Mahiru go make dinner. It'd be unforgivable to expect her to do any more work, whether she shared a portion of her cooking with him today or not. Now that it's evening, I don't feel like going shopping, so I'm going to order a pizza or something. Please let me treat you today. After all, you've been giving me all kinds of food and stuff, Amane offered. Oh, but, Mahiru started, but she was quickly cut off. If you don't want to eat with me, I'll order one for you, and you can take it home. This gesture was more about showing gratitude than trying to get Mahiru to eat with him, so if she wanted to eat alone, Amane didn't mind. That's not what I meant. It's just, I was surprised, because I've never ordered pizza. Huh, you've never ordered pizza? Yeah, I live alone, but I've never ordered pizza. I've made it myself, though. It's amazing that you would even think to make it, Amane exclaimed. Normally, if someone decided they wanted pizza, the three options were to buy a ready-made one at the store, get it delivered, or go eat it in a restaurant. He was sure that there were very few people who would think to go through the long, laborious process of making one from scratch. Well, there's nothing strange about ordering pizza for delivery, Amane asserted. I do it all the time myself, order delivery or go to a family restaurant solo, you know, like most people. I've actually never been to one of those, either, Mahiru admitted. Now, that is rare. I go alone pretty often, and my parents go to restaurants whenever they don't feel like cooking. I guess your parents aren't the type to eat out often, huh? In our house, the help made the meals. The help? Damn, you must be really rich. Finding out that Mahiru was fabulously wealthy explained a lot. It certainly cleared up why Mahiru's mannerisms were so graceful and refined and why her clothes and possessions were always top quality. Even the girl's gait seemed to speak of an affluent upbringing. At Amane's words, Mahiru broke into a thin smile. "You're right, I think I am comparatively well off." Quickly, Amane began to regret what he'd said, realizing that Mahiru's smile was not one of delight or pride but rather a display of self-mockery. It seemed that her family was an area of discussion that was better left alone, and Amane didn't plan to pry any further. Everybody has a thing or two they'd rather not talk about. It's only polite to respect that, especially with people you don't know very well. "Well, then this will be an interesting experience, won't it? Here, order what you like." Dropping the topic of Mahiru's parents, Amane showed her a menu for a pizza place Amane occasionally ordered from. Out of all the places that delivered, it was the best. Their pizza was no match for one cooked in an authentic wood-fired oven, of course, but they did offer a wide variety of toppings. Their choices ranged from the standard fare to stuff more suited to little kids, so Amane figured that there was sure to be something that would appeal to Mahiru's tastes. Mahiru accepted both the change of subject and the pizza menu. She immediately began poring over the list of options, her luminous brown eyes drawn to the many colorful photos of different pizzas. Her eyes weren't usually very expressive, but now they shimmered vividly. She must really be looking forward to this, Amane thought. Mahiru seemed a bit nervous, but after considering it for a little while, she pointed out a party pizza with 4 types of toppings and said hesitantly, "All right, this looks good." She turned an expectant gaze to Amane. With a slight smile, Amane nodded, picked up his phone, and dialed the number printed on the menu. Mahiru's eyes sparkled with anticipation. An hour later, their pizza arrived. Mahiru dug in without hesitation. The pizza was divided into sections to allow the different flavors to be sampled on their own, and she'd hesitated a little over which one to try first but finally decided to start with a piece covered with a hearty helping of bacon and sausage. Amane was not surprised when Mahiru nibbled at her slice with small, delicate bites. He supposed her refined upbringing had taught her to eat everything with poise and grace, even delivery pizza. Watching Mahiru gave Amane a warm feeling inside, like he was watching a small, cute animal. She was strangely adorable as her eyes closed and her expression relaxed a little while she chewed on the stretchy cheese. Usually, the girl appeared so mature. In this moment, however, she finally looked her age. Amane quelled an intense urge to pat Mahiru's head as she enjoyed the pizza with little, mincing bites. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, you just look like you're enjoying it," Amane replied. "Please don't stare at me so much." The frown she cast at Amane was anything but cute, however. "Geez, you've really got no charm." "Well, that suits me fine. If I were to act like I always do at school, you'd say I was making you uncomfortable." "Yeah, I guess that's true. I'm more familiar with this version of you than the school version." At school, Amane barely ever even saw Mahiru, and they had certainly never spoken there. He only occasionally caught a glimpse of her, and she always wore that same, impenetrable smile that she showed to everyone. Here, he got to see beyond that layer. This has to be the real Mahiru, Amane thought. At school, she always adopted her fake, public persona. "As far as I'm concerned," he continued, "I never get tired of this version." "The version with no charm? Don't hold a grudge. You know, how do I put this? I can never tell what you're thinking when you're at school. Mostly about my schedule and my classes, I suppose. So even you can be clueless once in a while, huh?" Amane had meant to say that Mahiru always looked like she had some secret on her mind, but Mahiru apparently took his words at face value. She looked at him with a subtle protest in her eyes, as though she had meant something else entirely. "I didn't mean it like that," Amane quickly added. "It's just, you don't show what you're thinking. All I meant was that it's easier to be around someone who's honest about their feelings, even if they're a little rude, than someone who you can never read." "Do you think how I behave at school is bad?" Mahiru asked directly. "Well, I can't really hate on it, since it's probably the secret to your success. I just wonder if you ever get tired of it," Amane said. "Not really. I've been acting like that since I was little." "Hardcore, huh?" If she'd been keeping up this act since childhood, spending her whole life trying to be the perfect young woman everyone expected her to be, Amane could understand how it would definitely be difficult for her to set that persona aside. Amane had been able to infer a little bit about Mahiru's home life, but he knew that there was no way he could ask her more about it. "Well, isn't it nice to have a place where you can relax? And now you've even got a buddy to chill with." Honestly, I don't find you relaxing at all. You make my stomach turn in knots, Mahiru stated coldly. I'm sorry? Amane apologized, a little dumbstruck. Mahiru gave an exaggerated shrug and let out a strange little laugh. Chapter 6: A Visit from a Friend. After the day-long cleanup, Amane felt like the wall between Mahiru and him had become ever so slightly thinner, but that didn't necessarily mean they had become much closer. They still had absolutely zero contact at school. They would make small talk sometimes when he went to get his portion of dinner from her, but that was all. Just the other day, Mahiru had scolded Amane, telling him that he had to keep his apartment tidy. Her words were definitely stern, but they also made it clear that she actually did care about him, at least a bit. Since Amane was receiving frequent reminders and tips on cleaning, his apartment remained as nice as it had been when he and Mahiru had finished tidying up the place. Wow, it really is clean. That was the first thing Itsuki said when he came over on a day off. He muttered in an astonished voice when he saw the drastic transformation the living room had undergone. I never thought your place could look this good. It was so dirty. I remember I helped you pick up stuff once before, but it was a wreck the very next day. Give it a rest, Amane shot back at his friend. No, but seriously, think about it. What's the longest number of days you've gone without dropping something on your floor? This is easily a new record. I've kept it going for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? That's it? That's nothing to be proud of, you know? Amane scowled a little. He was now keenly aware that normally, people did not leave their things lying around on the floor. Still, he knew that Itsuki was only speaking from a place of kindness and common sense, so Amane couldn't say much. After all, Itsuki had helped him out, too, long before Mahiru ever had, so Amane knew he shouldn't act like a jerk. Itsuki smiled cheerfully at Amane's sullen silence. Hey, I guess if your apartment's this clean, I could even bring Chi over. No way, why should I have to watch you two flirting in my own home? No need to be shy, buddy. Don't turn my place into your hangout. Why should I have to watch my friend and his girlfriend getting all lovey-dovey? Amane wished Itsuki could understand his position and appreciate what kind of torture it was like to have to watch a sickeningly sweet couple flirting all the time. He knew that Itsuki was just joking about bringing Chi over, but even so, Amane didn't find it very amusing that he constantly had front-row seats to their cloying relationship. Relax, it was just a joke. Anyway, now that you've finally got the place clean, don't go messing it up again, you hear? I've got it under control, Amane assured. Someone like you? Well, whatever. Just make sure you get in the habit of putting things away after you take them out. Are you my mom? Now, Amane, dearie, you have to be diligent about cleaning your room. Itsuki mocked. That's so creepy, you sound so much like my mom, it's scary. Amane felt a shiver rocket down his back when Itsuki scolded him in a forced falsetto. He was sure Itsuki had never even met his mother, but still, the impression had hit a nerve. Itsuki's impersonation of a lady wasn't particularly soothing, either. Amane stuck out his tongue at him, and Itsuki cackled with amusement. Is that what your mom's like, Amane? Because mine is really cold toward me. Actually, I'm jealous. My mom bugs me whenever she gets the chance. She sounds like a mom who really cares about her son. I think she's just overly attached. No, I'm sure she has to look after you because you're such a slob. Oh, shut up. I mean it, you know, that my mom is too clingy. Perhaps because Amane was an only child, his mother was always fussing over him. She didn't exactly spoil him, but she did poke her nose around in his business and read too much into things. Amane certainly didn't hate her, but she made him uncomfortable at times. His mother had given him all sorts of instructions when he'd left home to live on his own and attend high school, and sometimes she would show up to check on him without warning. The pop-ins could be pretty awful. Well, doesn't that just show how much she treasures you, Amane? And her love is a heavy burden. Oh, I give up. You're the kind of guy who never appreciates what he's got till it's gone. You talk like you've got it all figured out, but don't you have your own problems dealing with that kind of meddling? Haha. It's Chi, man, what else can I do? Itsuki had all sorts of issues when it came to his father and his girlfriend, so his lecture really didn't have much weight behind it. Even so, Amane knew there was some truth to what his friend was saying, so he didn't argue any further. Itsuki sighed quietly, as if to tell Amane to let him worry about his own problems. His expression remained cheerful and carefree, however. I'll mess up anybody who interferes with me and Chi, Itsuki said, declaring something a little unsettling. Anyway, I'll figure out something for my dad's situation, so it's all good. For the time being, how about you sort your life out, Amane? Itsuki laughed loudly, and Amane responded by making a sour face. I know that, you don't have to tell me. He smiled secretly to himself, however, thinking how he'd heard that before from another person recently. Itsuki had come to visit Amane's apartment in order to see how he was living. Well, actually, he'd mostly come to hang out and mess around, so their discussion about the state of the room quickly wrapped up, and before long, they were playing a video game. Their initial intention had been to study for a test the next week, but that notion had been quickly discarded. Careful with the health packs, we're gonna run out, Amane said. We'll think of something, it'll be fine, Itsuki answered. Not at this level it won't. As Amane pondered how best to deal with his less cautious co-op player, the sound of the doorbell rang through the room and immediately gave rise to a different worry. A visitor? Itsuki looked up, too, after pausing the game. He knew that Amane had never really told anyone else where he lived, and that he didn't have any friends who might visit him at home, besides Itsuki himself. More importantly, any regular visitor would have been stopped at the lobby downstairs anyway, so a page should have come through the intercom. I don't really know, but it must be a neighbor, right? Distributing a community notice or something, Amane fibbed, knowing quite well who it likely was. Ah, gotcha, Itsuki answered. I'll just be a minute. Amane did his best to dispel Itsuki's suspicions and hurried toward the front door, struggling to hide the twitch in his face that might give him away. He was lucky that Mahiru hadn't called out to him after ringing the buzzer. He opened the door quickly, not bothering to check who it was, and slipped through the small opening to get outside where he couldn't be seen. Amane made sure to close the door behind himself. Just as he'd suspected, it was Mahiru standing there, blinking in surprise at Amane, who must have appeared to have been acting very unusual. Immediately, he pressed an index finger to his lips and shushed Mahiru. Please speak softly. Itsuki is here. Itsuki, she asked. My friend. He came over to play games. Ah, okay. Mahiru nodded in understanding of Amane's secretive behavior, then passed him a food container as she did every day without bothering to question him any further. Inside was a type of stew called odon, the perfect dish for the season now that the weather had gotten cold. Mahiru had probably been preparing it since morning. Amane accepted it with gratitude and let out a soft sigh as he looked at Mahiru. There was really no reason she ought to be doing this every day. Look, I really appreciate what you do, but I don't have a lot of time. Sorry, Amane apologized. I wasn't waiting to be thanked or anything. I'm glad, that we cleaned up enough that you can invite friends over, Mahiru answered. I guess I should kneel down and thank you. No way, don't do that. Mahiru looked at him with astonishment in her eyes. Perhaps she thought getting Amane to do something like that would make her akin to a tyrant. Amane smiled wryly. There had been a bit of earnestness in his statement, because he truly was indebted to her. She'd done so much for him that he really ought to be on his knees. Amane couldn't reconcile continuing to accept all the food for free, so he decided that he wanted to discuss paying her for the meals at some later date. Well, if your friend is here, I suppose you can't talk for too long. Excuse me. You're always helping me out. I'll make sure to keep this secret from Itsuki. Please do. I mean, even if I told him everything, he probably won't believe me. I suppose not. Mahiru's honest confirmation raised some complex feelings for Amane, but he knew she was right. If he was in Itsuki's shoes and someone told him that Mahiru Shina had been making meals for him daily, he definitely wouldn't believe them. Anyone would dismiss such a claim as a fantasy. That was how out of reach this angel was. Normally, it would be impossible to imagine Mahiru treating even a handsome, superior man to her home cooking, let alone a mediocre and slovenly guy like Amane. Hell would sooner freeze over. Can I ask you one thing? Amane called. What is it? Mahiru stopped before entering her apartment. What good does it do you to keep sharing your meals with me? Typically, people didn't give away food for free, they expected something in return. Amane probably wouldn't have thought about doing the same for Mahiru if their positions had been reversed. Even though he didn't believe for a moment that there was even the slightest possibility that she had feelings for him, he couldn't help but wonder. At Amane's question, Mahiru's gaze wandered upward as if she was giving it a bit of thought herself, then, without any change to her expression, answered, my own self-satisfaction. There's nothing more to it. It's just as easy for me to cook for 2 people as it is for 1, and I guess I simply like treating people. So it's because you like to cook? Well, there's that, too. I think it's also because I can give you food without you getting any weird ideas, and you'll genuinely tell me that my cooking's tasty without any ulterior motives. Plus, it's satisfying for me because I was concerned after seeing your eating habits. Is that how it is? Amane pressed, just the slightest bit disappointed. That's how it is. So don't worry about it. Just think of it as a sudden bout of good fortune. Yes, ma'am. Mahiru didn't seem like she was going to give him any more of an answer than that, and after bowing courteously, she said pardon me and returned to her own apartment. I guess that's how it goes, Amane mumbled to himself. I still don't think it's right for her to give it to me for free, though. He opened the door back into his own place. Who was it? Itsuki asked. My neighbor. She gave me some of her dinner. I'm gonna put it in the fridge, so don't restart the game without me, Amane replied. Ah, sorry, I already beat the boss. You gotta be kidding me. Chapter 7 The Angel's Injury and a Show of Gratitude. Every day on his way home, Amane passed the park where he and Mahiru had properly met for the first time. The building where Amane lived was less of a family-use apartment complex and more aimed at single people and couples, so there were few children around, and the surrounding apartment buildings were much the same. Tucked away and out of sight, the little park close to Amane's building was often deserted. It was in that little park devoid of children, Amane saw Mahiru for the second time. What are you doing in a place like this? He asked. Nothing. Mahiru was sitting on a bench with straight posture and didn't budge at all even after she recognized Amane and looked him over. In contrast to the first time the two had met there, this time they were already acquainted and were on speaking terms. That had made it easier for Amane to call to Mahiru, but the girl's voice had still been stiff when she answered. It didn't seem like Mahiru was on guard, as she had been during their first encounter. This was something different. Amane could tell that Mahiru was being careful not to let something show on her face. Come on, if it was nothing, you wouldn't be sitting here making that face. Did something happen? Amane inquired. Not really, Mahiru looked, as she had before when she was on the swing in the rainstorm, like she was lost and didn't know what to do. Seeing her like that worried Amane, but Mahiru didn't seem keen to speak on the matter. Though he was bound by their tacit promise not to interact outside their apartments, Amane hadn't been able to help calling out to Mahiru when he'd seen her all alone in the park again. Mahiru, for her part, probably did not much want to talk to him, her expression was stiff and blank. Amane thought it was fine if the girl wasn't feeling up to talking, when he noticed that there were a number of white hairs stuck to her blazer. You have some hair stuck to your uniform, were you playing with a dog or a cat? He asked. I wasn't playing. I just helped a cat that was stranded up a tree get back down, Mahiru explained. What a total cliché. Ah, I get it now. Wait right there. Don't you dare move. Amane had finally realized just why Mahiru was sitting there alone on the bench. He sighed and dashed off. He was certain that Mahiru would do as he had asked and would not go anywhere. Actually, it would have been more appropriate to say that she couldn't go anywhere. Muttering to himself about how Mahiru chose the strangest times to act tough, Amane bought a compress and medical tape from the neighborhood drugstore, along with a cup of ice normally used for iced coffee from a convenience store. When Amane at last returned to the park, he found Mahiru sitting on the bench, just as he'd expected. She hadn't so much as shifted. Sheena, take off your tights. Huh? He gave a direct order, and she answered in an extremely cold voice. Yeah, I know it's kind of sudden. Look, I'll put my blazer over you and turn around, so take the tights off. We need to ice the injury and put a compress on it. As expected, Mahiru was none too happy at being ordered to take off her tights, so by way of explanation, Amane waved the bag full of medical supplies. Mahiru's face understandably tightened. How did you know? You had one of your loafers off, and that ankle seemed slightly swollen. Plus, you didn't try to stand up. It really is a total cliché to sprain your ankle while rescuing a cat. Oh, be quiet. Yeah. Now, take off your tights and give me your foot. It was something anyone would have known just from looking, but Mahiru was making a sour face, perhaps because she hadn't expected him to notice that she was hurt. Obediently, Mahiru accepted Amane's blazer and put it over her knees, so it seemed like she was going to listen to what he was saying. Amane turned his back to Mahiru, put the ice from the cup he had bought at the convenience store into a plastic bag, and poured water over it. After he tied the top shut so it wouldn't spill out, he wrapped it loosely in a hand towel that he kept in his backpack, making an impromptu ice pack. Then he turned around slowly. Mahiru had done as he had asked and removed her tights, exposing her bare legs. They were slender and smooth and looked soft even as she tensed up. The unnatural swelling around her ankle was evident. Well, it's not that badly swollen, but it could get worse if you move it too much. First of all, this is going to be cold, but let's ice it for a bit. Once the pain goes away a little, I'll put a compress on, so take it easy, Amane explained. Thank you. From now on, just ask for my help. It's not like you'll owe me or anything. If anything, it's the opposite. I want to pay you back in some small way for everything you've done for me, so I'd appreciate if you would let me solve 1 or 2 problems for you. Mahiru sported her usual expression. Still, she didn't argue with Amane and quietly let him ice her ankle while her leg was propped up on the bench. Has the pain gotten any better? Amane asked after a moment. Yeah, a bit, Mahiru replied. All right, I'm putting the compress on, so don't get mad at me for being a perv or a groper or something, okay? I wouldn't say something so rude to the person helping me. Good to hear. Stressing that he had absolutely no untoward thoughts, Amane squatted down next to Mahiru's leg and stuck a compress on her swollen, red ankle. When Amane initially asked about the level of pain, it sounded like the sort of thing where Mahiru could still stand and walk, but moving risked agitating the sprain further, so she was better off sitting here quietly. As long as she stayed off it, it would probably remain a minor injury. Amane had just finished sticking on the compress and was securing it with medical tape when he noticed Mahiru staring intently down at him. You're surprisingly skillful with that, she commented. Well, I can do first aid. Still can't cook, though. Amane shrugged, acting a little silly, and Mahiru let out a small laugh. He was glad to see her taut expression relax some, even if it was only a tiny bit. Reassured by Mahiru's slightly softened attitude, Amane pulled the pants of his gym uniform from his backpack. Here, he said, handing them to Mahiru. What? She asked. Don't make that face at me, I don't like it. Anyway, your legs are exposed, right? And it's not like you can put your tights back on with the compress stuck to you. Relax, I haven't worn them. It would be bad to let her put her tights back on over her swollen ankle, especially now that it had medical tape wrapped around it. Since it looked so painful, Amane figured Mahiru could wear his gym pants, both as protection from the cold and to stop anyone from seeing her underwear. Mahiru seemed to understand that he was just trying to be considerate, and so she slipped the pants on. Amane snatched up his blazer and handed Mahiru the parka he'd been wearing. Here, wear this, he told her. Wait, but why? Do you want to be seen being carried? Letting Mahiru walk on her ankle was a bad idea. Amane had been planning to bring her home from the start. They were both headed to the same place, after all. Oh, sorry, but could you put my backpack on? Amane asked. I can't carry you on my back if I'm wearing it, obviously. Is there an option where you don't carry me? Look here, your ankle is twisted, so you need to rest it. No one's around, and I've got perfectly good legs, so please put them to use. Your legs? What, you'd prefer my arms? Would you rather I support you from the side? Are you even strong enough to carry me all that way? Are you making fun of me? Well, I'm actually not that confident. Amane knew he could support Mahiru if she leaned on him, but honestly, it would be quite difficult to fully carry her all the way back to the apartment complex. What's more, it would be sure to attract a lot of attention, which Amane preferred to avoid. He knew that Mahiru had been poking fun when she'd brought up his strength, so he smiled, glad she was feeling well enough to crack jokes like that. Look, if you're game, put the hood up and wear my backpack. After you get on my back, take your own bag, too, while you're at it. I won't be able to hold it if I'm supporting you, Amane instructed. Sorry, Mahiru muttered. I'm telling you, it's fine. It wouldn't be very manly of me to leave an injured person behind and go home or to make you walk. Amane crouched down and turned away from her, and Mahiru timidly leaned onto Amane's back. Mahiru was wearing Amane's parka, so she had on even more clothes than normal, but even so, he could feel her body pressed against him, slim and willowy. After confirming that Mahiru's arms were secured around his neck without choking him, Amane stood up slowly, carrying the injured girl on his back. I knew it, she's so light, Amane thought. He wondered if he should be the one worrying about her diet instead of the other way around. It was more likely that she was just naturally petite, though, that was probably all it was. Mahiru smelled slightly sweet, and though Amane could tell all sorts of things about how anxious she was feeling based on how tightly she clung to him, he headed for home without showing it. A few people did stare at the sight of a guy carrying someone on his back, but Mahiru had completely covered her face with the hood of his parka, so Amane wasn't too worried about what little attention was being paid to them. Alright, here we are. Amane carried Mahiru as far as her front door, then let her down and quickly turned to leave without interfering any further. Since Mahiru could get around on her own while leaning on a wall, Amane guessed that her injury was probably not all that serious. Thankfully, it was Friday, so Mahiru had plenty of time to rest her ankle and get back on her feet with no problems. I don't need dinner tonight, so you should rest. If you like, I could bring you some nutritional supplements, Amane offered. I'm fine. I have some stuff prepared, Mahiru answered. That's good. See ya. That was the most important thing, that food wouldn't be a problem. It was essential that Mahiru be able to keep still and rest. Amane watched her open the lock on her front door, and he, too, took out his apartment key. Started Mahiru. When Amane heard the girl's voice and turned around, he saw that she was looking up at him timidly, clutching her bag to her chest. She looked somewhat troubled, but as he tilted his head in confusion, she seemed to regain her resolve and looked straight into his eyes. Thank you for what you did today. You really saved me, Mahiru admitted. It's fine, really. I just did it because I wanted to. Take care. Embarrassed by the notion of Mahiru fretting over his help, Amane quickly dismissed the thought from his mind. After Mahiru gave him a quick nod, Amane turned to unlock his own door. It was only then that Amane realized that Mahiru was still wearing his parka and athletic pants, but he was sure she would return them another day, so he slipped into his apartment without saying anything. Damn, dude, you so healthy that you wear shorts year-round now? Amane's melancholy in Monday's gym class had less to do with his lack of athletic talent and more to do with the fact that he was wearing knee-length jersey shorts during an unpleasantly cold season. Everyone else had already switched to their winter gym uniforms, but Amane stood out from all the rest, his legs bare below the knee. As if. I just forgot my pants. Idiot. Shut up. Amane hadn't seen Mahiru over the weekend, and she still had his gym pants, but he couldn't tell Itsuki that, so there was nothing to do but say that he forgot. He had resigned himself to the inevitable mockery, though when Itsuki slapped his back, cackling with laughter, Amane still found it in himself to slap him back. Amane let out a soft sigh as he watched Itsuki groan quietly. Then his gaze shifted. At the moment, the boys were practicing their high jumps, and the girls were using the other side of the field. What's more, since two classes of students were using the field at once, it was fairly crowded. The girls were practicing different track and field events, so between taking turns, the girls had plenty of time to watch Amane's class. Do your best, Katawaki. Usually, the boys and girls took gym class in different places on campus. With the girls present, the boys were getting all worked up. The girls, on the other hand, all spent their time watching Amane's most popular classmate, the handsome Yuta Katawaki. Amane had never really talked to him before, but he was nice to everyone and was a great student, and on top of that, he was the ace of the track club despite being only a first year. Everyone knew he was popular with the girls. Amane figured Yuta must have won some kind of karmic lottery. A lot of the other boys didn't care for him as much, and there were always a lot of sulky looks when he was around. Oh wow, looks like Yuta's as popular as always, Itsuki observed. Looks that way, Amane answered dully. You don't seem too interested, Itsuki prodded. Well, it's not like we're friends or anything, we've barely ever spoken. So why should I care? It wasn't as though Yuta was mean or ever messed with Amane. They had nothing to do with each other, so Amane honestly did not care. He knew that he was in the minority there, but he couldn't bring himself to envy Yuta the same way all the other boys did. More specifically, Amane knew that Yuta was so far out of his league that envying him was pointless. Typical Amane. What, you don't get jealous now? Itsuki asked. Oh, should I be like wow, I'm so jealous of his popularity, huh? Amane mocked. That was pretty good. Itsuki guffawed. Amane looked over at Yuta, who was wearing a brilliant smile and basking in feminine adoration. Even Amane had to admit that Yuta's athletic body and handsome face made him look just like a prince. In fact, some girls had taken to calling him that. Yuta rewarded the girls' passionate gazes and shrill voices with another radiant smile and waved back at them. He really knew how to cultivate a following. Well, he sure is popular, no arguing with that, admitted Itsuki. I know. The other guys can't contain their jealousy, Amane said. Haha. But the girls are real energetic, too. Itsuki only had eyes for his girlfriend, Chitose. He had no interest in other girls, so he saw the Yuta issue as everyone else's problem. Chitose wasn't the least bit interested in Yuta, so Itsuki probably didn't spend much energy thinking about him. We've got a prince and an angel. This school has a lot of people with cringy nicknames. Come to think of it, I wonder if Mahiru the angel ended up getting enough rest. Amane hadn't seen her leave her apartment over the weekend. It was good she was resting comfortably, but he still wondered about the state of her injury. Amane stealthily scanned the field with his eyes. His class was sharing the field with Mahiru's, so she should have been there. Without too much effort, Amane spotted her. Even in a crowd, the angel was easy to pick out. She hadn't changed into gym clothes and wasn't practicing with the rest of her class. Evidently, she was sitting out today. Amane was sure that he was not the only boy staring at Mahiru, who sat there looking small and quiet. Though they were far away from each other, their eyes met suddenly, and when Amane shifted his gaze around awkwardly, he saw a small smile pass over Mahiru's lips. Since she was looking toward Amane, that meant she was also looking toward the rest of the boys. Each of Amane's classmates took the smile for their own, nearly inciting a riot. Did she just smile at me? No way, must be me. This is our chance. We've gotta impress her. The prince is hogging the spotlight. To think that Mahiru could cause such excitement with just one meager smile. Amane didn't know whether it was because she was that amazing or because the boys were all that simple. Bunch of morons, Itsuki muttered. He'd apparently been thinking the same thing. Amane chuckled. Well, if we don't want to fail gym class, we'd better get moving, too. What's that, Amane? The angel's heavenly gaze got you all riled up, too? No, nothing like that. I told you, I'm not interested. Well, guess I'll drop it, then. Since you don't care and all. Itsuki seemed like he was about to start boasting about how great girlfriends are, likely citing his own personal experience, but Amane was quick to brush him off. Yeah, he said. He spared one more glance in Mahiru's direction and smiled wryly. Thank you for what you did the other day. Here's your parka and sweatpants back. That evening, when Mahiru brought him his portion of dinner, she was carrying a paper bag in addition to the plastic container. Amane could see at a glance that the parka and pants he had loaned her a few days ago were folded neatly in the bag. How's the ankle? He asked. The pain is already mostly gone. I've decided not to do any exercise until it's completely healed, Mahiru replied. That's for the best. Looks like you're sitting out gym class, too. Yeah. Mahiru had decided to play it safe and not participate in gym, and Amane figured it was probably the right thing to do. Her ankle didn't look like it was hurting her anymore, but she still slightly favored that leg when she walked, indicating that it was not yet entirely healed. As Amane was nodding at the girl's sensible decision, he thought back on the day's gym class and smiled suddenly. You know, you're really amazing, Miss Angel. With a single smile, all the boys were practically bursting with excitement. I told you to stop calling me that. And it's not as if I like that kind of attention. It really bothers me, you know, Mahiru said. Well, who wouldn't get fired up when a beautiful person looks at them? You know, the girls started shrieking today, too, when Katawaki waved at them. Katawaki, oh, that super popular guy? Mahiru didn't seem to be too interested in the prince. Actually, it seemed like she didn't even recognize his name. Amane had to describe him a bit before Mahiru realized who he was talking about. Yuta wasn't as popular as the angel, but he was a fairly well-known boy in their grade, so Amane was surprised that she didn't know who he was. You're not interested in him? Amane asked. Not particularly. We're in different classes, and we've never really spoken, Mahiru replied. The other girls go bananas for him, though. They can't get enough of the cool dude. Well, he does have a handsome face. But we don't talk, we don't have any connection. So I don't really care. You're so candid about things like that, Amane observed. Well, if looks are so important, don't you think it's strange that you don't like me? Asked Mahiru. Oh, so you do realize how beautiful you are? Mahiru was quite right in what she said. Beauty could be the spark that ignited greater affections, but it was rarely the sole source of love. Amane agreed with that, just as he agreed that Mahiru was very pretty. It was certainly a surprise to hear her say that herself, though. I know that, objectively speaking, I'm considered very attractive, and I do work hard to maintain my appearance. It's only natural. Given how often people make a big deal about my looks, I can tell what they think of me even if I don't want to know. Mahiru didn't seem to be boasting in the least. She was certainly being honest about how much effort she spent on her appearance. Mahiru had always had a good-looking face, but clearly she was not content to coast by on natural good looks. Her hair was like a radiant halo, befitting her angelic nickname, and the luster of her skin was also always perfect, without a single blemish. Her hands didn't get chapped, even when she was doing housework, and even her fingernails were beautifully polished. The gentle curves of her body spoke to a well-balanced figure that had likely taken some effort to cultivate. "I'm going to say something straight up, so don't get mad at me," Amane began, "but you don't seem to be embarrassed by all this praise." "I'd get annoyed before I'd get embarrassed if someone wouldn't stop flattering me," Mahiru answered curtly. "Guess being beautiful has its own struggles. Still, beauty does have its advantages, so I suppose I shouldn't complain." "You say that like you wouldn't know." "What? Would you rather I bashfully say, oh, no, that's not true?" "No, as someone who knows what you're really like, that would be weird." "Exactly. Honestly, I don't see the point in putting on an act like that in front of you." "Glad to hear it." Mahiru had only recently dropped her public persona around Amane, so if she changed back now. Amane could feel goosebumps prickling at the thought of facing the distant angel he saw at school rather than the girl he was gradually getting to know. In the end, things between the two of them remained as they were. Amane looked at the food container he'd been handed. There was actually more food than usual. The container was packed with several side dishes, each one a large portion. Rather than leftovers, it was more like Amane had been handed a fancy boxed lunch. "Today's quite the smorgasbord," he said. "Because you took such good care of me," Mahiru replied. "I told you not to worry about that." "Oh, there are croquettes in here." Amane could never say no to croquettes. Croquettes were frequently sold a la carte but could be a big pain to make yourself. As such, you could consider them the pinnacle of home cooking. After steaming potatoes, mashing them, stirring in sautéed beef, onions, and more, and then forming the patties, you had to completely chill them, then add batter and fry them. It was a very involved process. Even Amane, who rarely cooked anything, had watched his mother make croquettes and had decided never to make them himself because they were such a pain. "Well, I had them already made and chilling, so I only had to fry them," Mahiru explained. "Is that why there's fried chicken, too?" asked Amane. "That's right." Living alone, Amane didn't get to eat a lot of fried dishes, so he was grateful for the handmade food. Of course, they were best when they were freshly made, while the coating was still nice and crispy, served with hot rice. "Sometime, I'd like to try them straight out of the oil," Amane muttered. Mahiru had packed the fried chicken into the container after letting it cool, perhaps for hygienic reasons. So no matter what, Amane would need to warm the food back up. Though fried foods could be restored to a crispy texture via a toaster oven, it still wasn't the same as eating the stuff fresh. Amane had no doubts that Mahiru's cooking would still be delicious, of course, but it would probably be even better right from the pan. Amane hadn't meant to whisper what he had been thinking, his desire had simply leaked from his lips. Unfortunately, he'd said it loud enough that Mahiru raised her eyebrows a little. "Are you inviting me over?" she asked. "That's not what I'm saying at all. It's already too presumptuous of me to share your meals." Amane hadn't meant it that way at all, and he shrugged and vehemently denied it. Mahiru brought a hand to her mouth and directed her gaze downward. She seemed to be mulling something over and did not make eye contact with Amane. "Your share," she finally said. "Huh? Let me cook at your place, and we can consider that as part of paying for your share of the food expenses." Mahiru's sudden proposition left Amane's mouth hanging open in shock. The accidental mention about eating the fried foods fresh had been more of a sardonic wish than anything else. That Mahiru had actually considered and agreed to it left Amane completely bewildered. Normally, who would think of going into the home of some boy they didn't know all that well to cook dinner? Maybe it would be more efficient to cook at his place rather than bring the food over after, but he was a member of the opposite sex, and it wasn't like they were close friends. Wouldn't doing that make Mahiru uneasy? "You definitely don't need to do that. I've already received way more than I could ask for, way more than I deserve." "Aren't you worried about your safety? If you try anything, I'll crush you. Hard. No mercy." "Ack, you're scary." I felt a chill. "Well, I don't suppose it will come to that. You already know what the risks are, and I've decided you won't do anything. You know how popular I am at school, right? Even supposing I did try something, it'd be the end of me." Mahiru was vastly more popular than Amane, and on top of that, everyone saw her as this delicate girl, so if word got around that Amane had so much as thought about doing anything inappropriate to her, he was sure he'd never be able to set foot on school grounds again. Amane was not so foolish or so